one place where there is not ice, Eric, is Lakeland, Florida. Where the Detroit Tigers tomorrow on Saturday
What a transition.
You like that? That was good. You like that? Yeah. Tomorrow on Saturday, the Tigers are going to kick off their Grapefruit League spring training against the Phillies at 1 p.m. Garrett Hill is going to be on the mound. But the question was asked, and I'm going to present the question to you. Are you fed up with the Tigers? Because it seems like there are a lot of fans who are fed up with the Tigers. I'll give you an example. I wrote we wrote an article about Spencer Turnbull, and I shared it to some different Tigers pages. And the author did a great job. But the very first comment that somebody gave was like, who cares? I was like, it's a dude coming off of Tommy John surgery. He has the last no-hitter in Tigers history as of right now. He's working his way back. He's part of your team, and that's kind of our collective response as fans. How you feeling about the Tigers, Eric, coming into 2023? Are you just fed up with the Tigers?
I don't want to say I'm fed up. But I do want to speak for the disgruntled fan. I want to speak for that
here we go.
bitter, angry fan, because while it may not be like I'm a wrestling fan, it's good to be like mad at the heels or like the teams you're mad at, because at least you still have interest. The Tigers are getting to a point where like casual fans and like normal fans like me, where they may not care as much. I don't want to say I'm fed up, but I absolutely understand the lack of interest right now. Like, let's be clear. Let's take it before last year.
Man.
The Tigers have been in a position where they've been either refusing to rebuild and sitting in like this purgatory stage, or just telling us there's no more rebuild. We're either rebuild, but then in the middle of the season or beginning of the season have to go into a rebuild mode. So the fans have been dealing with a lot, and seeing with the product, it hasn't been great. They were bottom 20s in fielding, pitching, and batting last season. They were terrible in all aspects.
Bottom 20s. They were like bottom 25.
Yeah, like that's...
Defensively, they were a pretty good team. They were decent defensively, but offensively, they were the worst team in the MLB.
Thanks to Riley Green. He is the one shining star that I'm looking forward to watching.
For sure.
Outside of that, yeah, I don't blame the fans for feeling checked out. I feel like, again, like we talked about last time, I feel like the biggest, like outside of Riley Green, the best thing that came last season was Miggy chasing history. And that's not necessarily a good thing when you're trying to contend and reestablish winning. So
for sure.
Yeah, it's a lot of frustration, and I understand it from the fan base. I really do.
I understand it, I guess. Like, I don't know. I go back and forth on this because, listen, in the middle of last year, before Alec Vila was fired, on my baseball show, The Corner, I did a segment and said, straight up, Tigers fans had been lied to. Because
you can make that case.
That is kind of what it feels like.
Yep.
Who do you place the blame on, though, for the state of this team?
The front office. It has to be the front office. Like, even, like I said, if you go...
But who in the front office? Are we blaming Scott Harris 5 months on the job?
No. I'm blaming
he's
the
the front office.
Before that. I blame the regime just before that.
Okay.
Even, like, back to, like, where Illich, like, kind of power before... He was in a position like where they were bringing guys like, God, I'm forgetting the name now. Where they were bringing in like a George Zimmerman, and they were trying to make it seem like,
Justin
we're still just a couple. Justin, that's the name I was thinking of. Yeah. The names that they're like saying, we're still in contention mode. No, you're not. It's time maybe to kind of pull back and let go of some of these bad contracts, maybe get rid of some of these pieces that aren't fitting. And they weren't trying to do that. They were trying to act like they were better than they were, like during these like building stages. So I think that's kind of added to some of the disinterest and the lying and deceiving that you were talking about.
I think the biggest mistake and the biggest misstep that was made was before last season when they signed Eduardo Rodriguez. They made a trade for Austin Meadows. They signed Javi Baez. Mr. Illich gets out and goes, not Mr. Illich, because that title is revered for Mike Illich. Chris Illich says the rebuild is 100% over.
Mm-hmm.
So I understand where you're coming from.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the Tigers, right? Like, if we're a fan, okay, are we that fickle that just because we've had to be patient through a bad regime, we now are going to cast the sins of that regime on the new regime. Because that's what's happening. There's a lot of blame because this offseason, and we talked about this a little bit, and we're going to get into it a little bit more. Do you think the Tigers did enough this offseason to make 2023 interesting?
No. Not at all. Because to me, it has to come with, like, a lot of hope is being pinned on those young players we've talked about, like Torkelson. A lot of we wait on him. Riley Green, we're going to see another step forward taken for him.
Akil
Badu. Like, there's a lot of guys. Like, Baez has to have a bounce back year too. Like, Miggy cannot again be the standout for this team. That cannot be the story.
He won't be.
I hope not. And, like, on top of that, too, adding to the frustration, I think people are still upset about the Carlos Correa fumbling, especially considering what he just did this offseason.
Hold on a second, though. Hold on a second. Let's go back to Carlos Correa. What Carlos Correa fumbling? What fumbling? What did they do wrong?
He was supposed to be a target for the Tigers.
They targeted him. They offered him 8 years, $275 million last year.
I thought he was lowballed by the Tigers. I said
no.
A lot of the talk was that he was lowballed.
No, absolutely not. And whatever narrative that came from needs to die very quickly. The front office offered him a long-term $275 million deal. He wanted $300.
Why would I give him $300?
I wouldn't have given him $300 last year.
Is that sizable of a difference? $275 is pretty big too.
$275 is pretty big.
8-year span.
For sure. I wouldn't have given him 8 years either. But they offered him that.
Though. Yeah, that's baseball. They love those extended long contracts like that.
They do. Well, the players do because it's guaranteed money, right?
Right.
Like, and that's where you see. But you say they fumbled the Carlos. They didn't fumble the Carlos Correa last year. Could they have offered more money? Yeah. But personally, I would have said, hey, Carlos, give us 5 years. Let's go 5 years. We'll give you an astronomical average annual salary.
Okay.
And come play for us for 5 years and then go in free agency again. You know what I'm saying? But to say that they didn't try, they did try. They offered him a contract and he turned it down and went and signed a ridiculous, should have never been signed contract with the Twins.
Wasn't
a 3-year, $300 and whatever million contract with opt-outs after year 1 and year 2? That's a ridiculous contract. That is not a team-friendly contract. And not that he should be signing a team-friendly contract, but that is like, organizationally, that's a bad contract.
Right.
And then you saw the mess that happened this year with him. He was on 4 different teams this year.
Sure, but you could have debated that maybe he would have had a better fit here with the Tigers.
For sure.
Considering the relationship he had with the manager, considering their need for the infield, like could have been a good stop. Like, and especially if you're pitching this narrative of the rebuild, not you, but the front office saying the rebuild's over. You make those kind of splashes to prove that.
Okay, I agree with you in that sense.
Right.
But they also spent upwards of $200 million last year.
Do you think it was well spent?
For Javi, I don't mind Javi. For Eduardo Rodriguez, he can go into the sun for all I care. I'm not. To be honest with you, you want my honest opinion?
I do.
I really hope that Scott Harris is on the phone with Brian Cashman right now with the New York Yankees saying, I've got Eduardo Rodriguez and I'll eat this much of his salary so that you'll take him. Because the Yankees have a starting pitcher that just went down with shoulder surgery. Mm-hmm. They need starting pitching. We have starting pitching. We got a lot of depth starting pitching. Is it going to hurt our rotation to start the year? Yeah, it's going to hurt our rotation to start the year, but you know what it's going to do? It's going to get young guys the opportunity to throw innings, which is what this year is about.
Okay.
So for everybody that's out there, and I want to be very cautious because as a fan, I get it. You're sick of being patient, right? Because you've been told to be patient since 2017 when this rebuild began.
Yep.
They made the playoffs the last time in 2014. 2015 was a disaster of a year. That's when Dombrowski left. He made the trades that he made, bringing Matt Boyd and Daniel Norris and Michael Fulmer to the team. 2016, you say, they weren't really in contention. They were one game out of a playoff spot in 2016.
Yep.
They lost on the last day of the season in Atlanta, and had they won that game, they would have been in the playoffs. So they were technically still on like that fine line of, are we good or are we not good, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think there was a lot more we're not that good, specifically because Brad Ausmus was our manager then. But then you had the trade of JD in 2017. You had the trade of Justin Verlander in 2017. And then the trade of just about everybody else after that. So since 2017, it's been, okay, we're going to rebuild this. We're going to rebuild it this way. And they trusted Al Avila to do that. Didn't go well.
No.
I guess that's the best way to say it, right? It did not go well.
No, but like on top of that though, like especially because we talked about like the state of like all Detroit teams. It seems like,
yeah,
except maybe the Lions. Like it seems like basically all of them are going through rebuild. In baseball, rebuilds take longer than they do necessarily than like the NBA.
But
like,
they don't have to. They don't
really?
have to.
How?
Because you can still build a team, and that's the thing. I agree with you. They take generally the parity in the NFL allows you to turn around a team in about 2 to 3 years.
Absolutely.
Which is why everybody's so excited for the Lions next year. Like literally, everybody is so excited for the Lions last year because it seems like they finally got the rebuild done right. Hockey's going to take a little bit longer because you got prospects. I agree with you that baseball is going to take a little bit longer because most of the time you're trading established stars for younger prospects, and those have to. However, if you build the right type of profile and you build the right type of roster and the right type of team, it doesn't have to take that long. The Guardians last year, everybody thought the Guardians were the cast-off team. They were surprised when Jose Ramirez signed with them. They were the youngest team in baseball last year and the best team in the AL Central.
Okay.
Because it doesn't have to take that long. It's about who you acquire and how you bring them along, and more specifically, how you develop them. What the Tigers lacked over the last few years was a good developmental program.
Right.
Because they had too many guys that were just legacies and weren't really good baseball development people.
Right.
Well, last year they bring in guys from the Dodgers organization to help their player development.
Right.
And guys and young prospects like Colt Keith and those guys, they're taking off. Like, potentially could be challenging for a starting spot at third base. Colt Keith, and he was in Double-A last year. Then Scott Harris comes in, and you saw all of the coaching changes that he made focused on what he said in his presser. We're going to acquire young talent. We're going to develop and retain young talent, and we're going to control the strike zone.
Right.
Those are the three things that he said. And guess what? Every player that he's brought in this year has been young and controls the strike zone.
Yep.
And then on top of that, now I get it. The owner goes down to Lakeland, says we got a new plane and we're getting a new clubhouse, like they're revamping the clubhouse, which is good. But people are like, well, why can the plane pitch 200 innings? Can the plane play defense? Like, can it hit the ball? Like, why are we spending money on that and not players, right? Develop and retain young talent. This is important because if you have young talent, you want to make the Tigers what the Lions seem to be right now. You want to make them that destination.
Right.
Right? Winning helps, for sure. Winning helps. And that's the underlying foundation of everything. I agree with you.
Okay.
Because I think that's where you were going.
No. It's not everything. Because even if you look at like the Pistons, like when they we talk about how in the NBA it can be a guy or two that changes your whole fortune. When Cade Cunningham was a rookie, the Pistons were losing, but seeing his growth and seeing him like mature immediately, that's what gave teams or fans like that hope. I don't think we're going to see that from the Tigers. Like, yes, the young guys is a lot predicated on them. I think it's going to take a little bit longer to see that growth and that development, especially in a sport where a lot of the pieces are dependent on guys working together, those units working together, more so than a lot of other sports. So I think that frustration is all residing in that. Like, we had to get the right people in the front office, and now we have to see if these young pieces are going to work and develop. And I don't think fans are in a position where they're patient enough to wait for that. They're saying, show me before I believe anything in this
point.
I
get it. You said that last time, right? It's like, prove it. It's like, absolutely. Prove it, right? What if I said, just give it one more year? And let me be very clear about this.
Mm-hmm.
Good baseball happening in 2024, with 2023 being a very pleasant surprise for you. Because I don't think expectations can be any lower for the Detroit Tigers right now. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. For sure.
I would almost be willing to bet they will exceed most fans' expectations this summer.
Which you said, if I'm not mistaken, is like what, north of like 60 plus games, I think, or more than that.
I think they win a minimum, not a minimum. I think they win a minimum of 6 more games this season, which put them at 72, and they could potentially win 14 more games, which would put them at 80. And 80 wins is an exciting baseball season.
That's a sizable leap, though.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But again, we've addressed this. We've said, number one, historically bad injury luck last year.
For sure.
Historically bad career performances by some of your key guys that you thought you were getting contributions from. Jeimer Candelario, who's no longer here anymore and shouldn't be here anymore. People upset that he's not here to play third base. There's a reason he's not here to play third base. If he has a great time in Washington, good. Good for him. I'm glad. I'm just glad we didn't pay him $5 million to see if he would be good again this year.
Right. Because
we have Andre Lipsius. We have Colt Keith. We have the potential to fill third base. Mm-hmm. Just, with less experienced guys, I get that, but younger guys and guys that control the strike zone better. Mm-hmm. Jonathan Scope, not great. Javi Baez, not great in the first half. All of that is true. It's going to be very unlikely that all of that is true again in 2023. Not to mention 17 different starting pitchers. Not to mention Eduardo Rodriguez, who goes missing off the face of the earth for 4 months, right?
That's still crazy, yeah.
All of that combined leads to a bad clubhouse, for sure. No doubt it leads to a bad clubhouse. But you can already see in the week that they've been there in Lakeland that things seem a little bit different. There seems to be a buzz. And all I'm going to tell fans, and all I'm going to say is, you know me. Listen, I did the corner all last season. I cover the Tigers for DSN. This is my team. Eric's got the Pistons. We both share the Lions. I've got the Tigers.
Yep.
I'm asking you not to be patient for a rebuild. I'm asking you to be patient for a roster correction this season. And that's what's happening. You got rid of dead weight. Both Castros, Victor Reyes, Jeimer Candelario, gone. Why? Because they're not Major League Baseball players. But yet they're the type of players that Al Avila collected.
Right.
Scott Harris is not collecting those players. Scott Harris is going out. He's getting players that other teams don't want but fit the profile that he has to create organizational depth. Mm-hmm. To fill in if we need him to fill in. The season will really take off in July at the trade deadline. That's when Scott Harris's work begins.
Okay.
He had this offseason. This offseason was, this is what my roster looks like. This is what I want it to kind of look like. And 2023 is going to, or this is what I want it to look like. 2023 is going to give me a mirage of what I want it to look like so that I can then get to what I want it to look like. Does that make sense? That was a very roundabout way of saying it. But you've got trade pieces. You've got the ability to move players. And I don't think his offseason is necessarily done yet because there's some people out there that he could still sign if he wanted to sign. There's going to be roster spots open. And the trade deadline is in July. And that's when you can start to evaluate Scott Harris. You cannot put any of this on Scott Harris at all.
Not at all. No, I don't have any of those.
If you want to be mad at Chris Ilitch, you can be mad at Chris Ilitch, but at the same time, and I want to be political when I say this.
Don't be.
Okay, Chris Ilitch is a baseball moron. So the fact that he is behind the scenes, I appreciate that to an extent. He should have gotten involved in the Avila situation much earlier than he did. But he didn't. So now we move on. And now he's letting Scott Harris do his thing. And I'm cool with that. Let Scott Harris do the baseball talking. You know why? Because Scott Harris is not a baseball moron. Right. He's not at all.
So that's a good step forward.
It is a good step forward, and I'm just telling the fans, like, please, you are listen. I'm gonna tell you this. I've been to games all over the country. Yes, it's biased. Yes, I don't care. Detroit Tigers fans are the best baseball fans in America. Okay. This city has the best group of sports fans, in my opinion.
Okay.
Around.
Okay.
Do not give up on the Tigers. You can be fed up. You can be irritated. I get it. It's painful. It sucks to watch bad baseball. But it's not going to be as bad as you think it's going to be this year.
I hope so.
I will guarantee you that it will not be as bad as you think it's going to be this year.
I hope your voice resonates enough, because I've done my recon and research on the pulse of the fan base. And it seems like on social media, more fans are excited about Miguel Cabrera's new hairstyle than the on-field product that they're going to see from this team. And that worries me immensely.
And I think that those opinions will change by June.
By June? Okay, so just a few months.
I think there's going to be people that are like, oh, maybe this team isn't as bad as I thought they were. Maybe Scott Harris really does know what he's doing.
But you would agree. But you would agree that a lot has to happen in order for that to like go down that course. It's not going to be just a couple like little tweaks. It has to be a lot of things working right in order for them to get to that path. Would you agree with that?
They made the biggest move, getting rid of Alavila. They made the second biggest move, restructuring and changing and adding to their coaching staff. Mm-hmm. So a lot of things have already changed.
Right.
AJ Hinch is still the best, or one of the best managers in the game of baseball. I will argue that until the day I'm dead. He's a great guy for this team.
Very hopeful on him, yeah.
So there's not a lot that necessarily needs to change. Execution has to take place. That's
the biggest point.
That's the biggest point.
Okay.
And I think that they have enough exciting prospects and enough exciting people in camp to make that happen. And it's going to be a different game anyways. Like, rule-wise, things have changed. We can touch on this really quick. Mm-hmm. Major League Baseball has changed some of their rules. So, honest to God, okay? Do you sit and watch a baseball game?
Begrudgingly.
Like, you're flipping through the channels. You're flipping through the channels and you're like, oh, the Tigers are on. I'm going to sit here for 3 hours and watch it.
I can. I watch golf.
I didn't ask if you could. I did not ask if you could. I asked if you willingly sit down and watch the Tigers.
Not lately.
Okay.
If they give me a reason to, I will.
Okay.
But I can if they give me a reason to.
Okay. So it's like me in the NBA. Like, sure, I do not, like, I will readily admit I do not watch the NBA right now. That's fair. Pathetic. Did you see Dame Lillard was sitting out, or he did sit out?
I did see that.
The first game after the All-Star break because of rest. Oh my God. What the heck is going on? That's beside the point. Anyways, a lot of people are complaining about Major League Baseball, the length of game, how long it takes, which I'm sure factors into your unwillingness.
100%.
Okay. There's some rule changes. There's going to be a pitch clock. Pitchers have 15 seconds from the time they receive the ball to pitch the next pitch with nobody on base. 20 seconds with a guy on base. They think this will encourage stealing bases, which is always an exciting play in baseball. And they think that it'll significantly cut down time. Mm-hmm. The bases are also larger. They're 18 inches now instead of 15 inches. 1, to encourage stealing bases. 2, to encourage less collisions at like first base and things like that. Also, teams are not allowed to shift anymore. Do any of those rules move the needle for you? Do you think that the game will be more exciting?
The pitch count helps. The pitch count definitely helps. Like, I used to watch baseball a lot with my grandfather, and one of his biggest complaints is now passing on to me. Oh, every time they pitch, takes them a whole minute to get another one up. Like, yeah, that is kind of annoying. You up here just literally fixing your gloves,
fixing the hat, licking the fingers,
licking your fingers, spitting. Yeah, that's obnoxious. That's absolutely obnoxious.
It is obnoxious.
Again, I'm a little more patient. Like, I grew up caddying and watching golf, so I'm a little more patient and able to watch baseball. But again, based on the product I'm seeing, and what the Tigers have given us and what they've been fed from the front office, it makes it hard on top of the frustrating parts of the game. But yes, that absolutely does help. I do think they need to shrink the number of games. I think 160 plus is just ridiculous.
You can't do that, man.
You got to. I
mean,
trim it down
I agree.
somehow.
Actually, I 100% agree with you.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with you. They need to shrink the amount of games, but it'll never happen because of the amount of money. Eight games worth of revenue for owners.
Yeah.
That's a significant chunk of change.
Yeah, that's why
you know
the
what I'm saying?
Trying to add on more games.
Right.
Totally
It's crazy. I don't know. I don't know how I feel necessarily about the rule changes. I mean, when you're awarding. So here's what I didn't tell you. If a pitcher doesn't deliver the ball in 15 seconds, it's an automatic ball.
Ooh.
Yeah.
That does make it a little more interesting. Okay.
And if the hitter is not in the box within 8 seconds and ready to hit, it's an automatic strike.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The baseball purist in me is screaming nasty words in my head right now, because I get it. I get it. The product of baseball has taken a lot longer than it should, but that's kind of what baseball was meant to be. It's always been a game without a clock. You never had to beat the clock, right? You didn't have to wait for the zeros. Everybody got their outs and their at-bats. It's going to be good. It's going to move the games along, which is good. But I always thought, too, you know what? Maybe we cut a few commercials in between innings that might also cut down on some time that we have for baseball. I don't know. I'm excited. There's going to be a lot more baseball talk that we have because it's just what I do. I mean, you should have seen me last baseball season. I had MLB TV with 4 screens on my computer. 4 different games while the Tigers were playing.
You a junkie. Look at you.
I like the game. I mean, I like the game of baseball. I can't help it. And so I'm excited to talk, especially since Tigers are going to be better than you think. They're going to be better than you think. I promise they'll be better than you think. And everybody just needs to take one big collective sigh of relief and just say, in Scott Harris, we trust. Practice it with me. Practice it with me. On 3. Ready? 1, 2, 3. In Scott Harris, we trust. Thank you.
But be very clear. Let's extend it even more because you're speaking on his behalf. So in AJ, you have to trust.
That's also
your
true. Yeah.
name and your voice is on this as well. So in AJ, we have to trust too.
Yeah.
Huh?
But here's the deal.
Okay.
Go to our YouTube page, subscribe, hit the notification button because all of our content drops there. Go to our playlist, go to the corner, go watch my clips from last baseball season and see how I was right more than I was wrong.
Yep.
And I'll build that trust for you. I promise you I'll build that trust for you.
Yes.
Because I said Eric Haas should have been starting back in June. Mm-hmm. And guess what?
It worked out. Mm-hmm.
I was right. Who's our starting catcher this year? It's going to be Eric Haas. So I'm just saying, in Scott Harris we trust, and you can stamp that certified AJ approved.